Hello everybody and welcome to Dungeons and Drams. I wanted to challenge myself today with something interesting. So one of the more popular videos on this channel is the creation of a fantasy city. So it's easy enough to envision something like an elven city, a dwarven city, even a human city. However, something like a tiefling city has not been fully explored very much in pop culture or fantasy literature, etc., etc. You could still imagine what a cliche city might look like, but I wanted to challenge ChatGPT to help us come up with something. Now, typically, obviously, tieflings, they're probably a little bit more loners because of prejudice, etc., etc., at least in the common lore behind tieflings. But I want them to come together in a city for a reason. We're going to not only describe what that city looks like, what kind of shops and stores and artwork and whatever else is going to be in that city, but we're also going to try to find out, why does a city like this exist? And all of this lore can be generated by ChatGPT. So let's get into it. I'm going to do it a little bit different than I did last time. Because we already did the fantasy city creation, we have a number of prompts that we can utilize here. And you don't have to walk ChatGPT step by step by step. You can give it a whole bunch of something and then see what it comes up with. It might reduce the amount of response that it has, but it's easy to tell it to elaborate on things rather than, say, what's the city's name? What kind of geographic location? You could just say all of this stuff all at once. So let me tell you what I'm priming it with. I'm going to say, I'm a dungeon master who needs to create a brand new fantasy city. This city would be considered a small city with between 5,000 and 10,000 people in it. Tieflings are the primary residents of this city, but other races are welcome as long as they obey the laws. Geographic features. What geographic features would attract a city of tieflings? Government. What types of leadership would you consider appropriate for the city? Architectures. Are there any buildings or structures that would exist here that wouldn't exist in other cities? Artwork, and this will all be in the description. I would like you to tell me about some of the artwork of the city, anything that would help bring culture to the city. History. What are some major events that have happened in the city's history? These should include why the city was created, if there are any battles, any coups, and anything else that has happened here. Shops. Can you describe and name 10 shops that would be found in the city? They should include a magic shop, armor, weaponsmith, herbalist, alchemist, any other types of shop you think will fit in this area. And lastly, give our city a name. The good news is that our prompts worked great. The first thing here with the geographic is it gives us 4 different options of things that make some sense. And I'm not going to read these at length, just kind of give you a little synopsis. Volcanic activity, so basically a dormant volcano. They could be in dark forest, it could be in rugged terrain, or it could be in underground networks. Now the theme here is that all 4 of these are hard to get to, and that makes sense because these tieflings probably want to be left alone. This whole theme of persecution and trying to have a place that's just their own makes sense with any 4 of these. So at some point I'm just going to roll a d4 and we'll pick one. So it suggests 2 different types of government structure, but it wants them to work in unison, which could be an interesting way to introduce some tension or possibly some just battling for power. So you've got a Tiefling City, a unique blend of hierarchy and council-based leaderships could be apt. So you could have an arcane council, which is a powerful group of spellcasters, and you could have a meritocratic leadership, which is basically these people all come from the same world that wants to hate their kind. So if you have somebody who has done something impressive, something maybe they've fought in a war and they were single-handedly a hero, or maybe even something different, maybe they were like a crime lord or something like that, something impressive, they might be in charge of this whole city. But you've still got the Arcane Council, and then you've got the kind of like the people love this guy, but then you have the Arcane Council who kind of runs the show. Maybe those 2 working together could create some interesting tension. All right, so now you have the unique architectures, and I was looking forward to this one to see what it would put. It's cliche, but I also agree with it. So you have obsidian and dark stone buildings, you have intricately carved towers, and this one I didn't expect, public spaces for arcane practice. Now this makes a lot of sense because tieflings are naturally magical, so there's no reason that they would need to hide it. In fact, it should be celebrated and just out there in the open. I liked that a lot. For artwork, to reflect the rich culture, you have mosaics of infernal origins, which is kind of cool. So they've really embraced, they don't have to hide the fact that they have this infernal blood in them. They have tapestries and mosaics up to celebrate it. Sculptures of famous tieflings, that makes sense, pretty much anywhere. Murals of magical battles, showing historic moments and legendary conflicts. Now, historic moments, let's talk about that. This was interesting too. So you've got the foundation. Any city that you have should have a story of how it was founded. In this case, it was founded originally as a refuge for tieflings facing persecution, and like I said, supports the theme. So now we have the Battle of Ember Skies, a historical defense against an invading army showcasing their magical prowess. And then there's the Pact of Shadows, a momentous agreement with a powerful entity that shaped the city's future. Now, where I see this coming into play is you've got the founding, which was just a bunch of tieflings. They picked this spot. I did roll a d4 in between one of the cuts. And so let's say it's in a rough terrain, like that mountainous kind of rough terrain area. You've got all these guys, or women and men coming together, and they've started a little town. Now, this town was probably going to be overrun at some point by somebody who heard about them and didn't like them. So they made a pact with a devil or a demon. Forgive me, I forget which side they're on. Infernal, so it'd be devil. Anyway, so they make a pact with the devil, and this devil brings this city from the ground. You've got these obsidian towers. You've got this whole thing springs up almost overnight. And now you've got this Tiefling City. And I like that concept, and you could really play into that, how maybe there's something else that comes with that. Maybe devils kind of run amok in the city. It's not just tieflings. There's devils that are just kind of hanging around too, but they're not super aggressive, you know? Maybe they kind of abide by the rules of the city, at least to their own end. All right, anyway, I like that. And then the coup of Crimson Night, a political upheaval that changed the city's leadership. Okay, cool. So at some point, maybe one of these I don't think I'm going to be able to say that right. Meritocracy, one of these people just beloved, but taken out anyway. Who knows? All right, so now you've got some shops. They're everything that you could imagine, but it did give you some names, and if you care, you can read those. But here's another thing I loved, the city's name. Now, it's funny, I almost should have put this first, but whatever. Given the rich background and characteristics, the city could be named Crimson Embrace, symbolizing both its infernal ties and its welcoming nature to those of its kind. I don't know if I thought for like a half hour if I would have come up with a better name, because, you know, typically tieflings are going to be red too, so that helps. Obviously, you think devil, you think red, you think black, and embrace to show that there's like a brotherhood here. I think it's just a fantastic name. All right, so moving along from this. So now we've taken that idea of the pact that brought the city up from the ground. And what I'm going to do here is I'm going to tell it what I had in my head as I was reading this. Like, what do I think happened? But now I want it to just know that that's what I want and then tell me more about it. That's just, I love ChatGPT for this. You could get an idea, tell it your own idea based off what it told you, and now it's going to tell you why that is a thing. It's a very, very cool thing. Could you tell me more about the Pact of Shadows? I'd like this to reflect a deal that brought the city up from the earth overnight. Tell me the details of the pact. Tell me the name of the devil involved. I've got to say, I think ChatGPT is actually getting better at writing compelling stories, because I'm reading through this and I didn't want to stop. And I'm just like, every bit of this is so cool. So I'll try to give you a synopsis just so we don't sit here and read the whole thing, but honestly, it's cool. So background of the Pact. The formation of Crimson Embrace is intimately tied to the Pact of Shadows. Centuries ago, the Tieflings scattered and persecuted sought a sanctuary. Their leaders, a council of powerful mages, sought a drastic solution to create a haven for their people. They turned to the arcane arts and infernal contracts, seeking an ally in the depths of the Nine Hells. And guess who they found? Asmodeus. Yeah, so Asmodeus, they really went to the top. Now you might wonder why would Asmodeus even care? Well, he saw an opportunity to extend his reach into the mortal realm here. So there's a few different details of the pact, and this is actually very cool. First, the creation of the city, basically they said, hey, give us a city, and he rose it up overnight. And that was something that immediately brought attention on a global scale as like, did you hear about this magical city that just appeared overnight? So now people want to be part of this. Now, the price in return, this is actually interesting because in my mind, it should be a lot more. But it's kind of clever. So Asmodeus, basically, he said he wants a tribute of souls, right? He doesn't need it to be immediate. Anybody who rules over the Crimson Embrace forfeits their soul to the Nine Hells. And that is just the deal. The leaders and their descendants need to pledge an oath. Now, this keeps things in the same bloodline, but also gets more than just the person who was in charge. So if I'm in charge, my kids now have to also swear an oath. So even if they don't hold, the leadership position, they're also forfeited. So that's pretty sweet. That's really gonna kind of spread those tendrils out. All right. So, and also, maybe you don't even know that you had to, maybe you swear it when you're so young, you have no clue, and you go off and you start a family, and now Asmodeus comes and he claims all of them too. Who knows? This is really cool. The Oath of Shadows, so let's see, all of their descendants. The Seal of Asmodeus. Now, this was neat and kind of has Adventure Hook written all over it. The seal is in its manifested form in one of the deepest catacombs in the city. So as long as it is physically intact, the deal is sealed. And Asmodeus can't, he's going to get his souls, and the city is protected. So that's pretty neat. And it kind of help us go destroy this thing. All right, cool. You're going to fight a whole bunch of devils. The Infernal Council is a secret council within the city leadership known only as the Infernal Council, and they were established to ensure the terms of the pact are met and to communicate with Asmodeus's envoys. This is a question I just thought up, and I thought this would be interesting. Tell me 3 previous leaders of the city and what made them a good or bad ruler. And just like that, your city has some history. This is great. So Tharaval Shadowmantle, he ruled 150 years after the city's creation, and his legacy basically was fear and respect. His policies led to a well-defended and intellectually advanced city, but at the cost of personal freedoms and happiness. He started an arcane academy, but then he also said, you all have to do what I say because we're bettering the city. So people didn't love it, but they can see the value in it. And then you have Alondra Nightbreeze was second leader, and she's basically the opposite. She tried to overturn a lot of what the previous ruler had done, and people called her the Liberator Queen. And she's remembered with deep affection by the citizens, and her reign is often considered the golden age of Crimson Embrace, blah, blah, blah. So that's really cool. And then the third one basically is a guy who kind of expanded beyond the city walls, and he was a diplomat, and he worked with other cities, established trade routes, etc., etc. But he also established the Shadow Council, or sorry, no, not the Shadow Council. That's another thing. What is that from? The Shadow Council, whatever, some council, and the one that maintains the pact. And there's your history. So you now have 3 rulers that you can kind of lean upon, and that just makes your world have more color. I'm sure that you can see how you can take any idea and create a city out of it, or really anything that you want. I mean, obviously go back and watch some of the other videos I've done. There's a lot of different topics here, but this one's really neat because I feel like it's using some of the prompts we've established in a previous episode and applying it to something that frankly, I wasn't quite sure how to build. And this came up with some really good stuff. So any of this bit is elaborate. You could elaborate on, you could create NPCs, you could create adventure hooks, you could do whatever, but I'm going to let you guys do that yourselves because it'll be more relevant to what you want to build. All right. I'll see you guys next week where I'm going to be talking about how to flavor up your combat because frankly, roll dice, you hit with your sword is a little bit boring, and I have some cool ways to make it better. So I'll talk to you guys next week. Cheers.